Hello, welcome back to Bloodleaf. We're starting part 2 in this video. Part 2 is called Aklava. At the end of part 1, Aurelia has gotten to the wall around Aklava, but she doesn't have a way to get in. Remember, Kellen has just been killed. Taurus revealed his plan to pass off Lisette as Aurelia so she can marry, Lisette can marry Prince Valentine of Aklava, and Taurus is the one who killed Kellen. He stabbed him, and then Kellen fell down a ravine. So Aurelia is sad, and she's alone, but she does have Kellen's horse, Falada, and that's it. Okay. Part 2 begins with chapter 11, which is on page 101. It was still dark when I woke to the sound of voices outside the stall. The first belonged to Raymond Thackeray, but the second was younger, clearer. "She's real pretty, I tell you what," Ray was saying. "A little bit bedraggled and dirty, but real pretty. Long hair, nice legs, a little skinny for my taste, but probably a decent ride, I'd say." "I want to see her before I pay you a thing, Thackeray." "I know your taste, Zan. She's exactly what you're looking for, I swear." I cast around in the dark for something, anything I might possibly use to defend myself, eventually prying one of the knobby sticks from the wall with a prayer that its removal wouldn't bring the whole structure down on top of us. When the door of the stable opened, I was blinded by the glare of a lantern. "Not an inch closer!" I raised my stick, squinting into the light. "Don't you dare touch me!" You think he's here for you?" Ray burst into hooting laughter. The other person, the man he'd call Zan, lowered the lamp until his face was bathed in the yellow light, and I was startled at the sight of him. Simon? I thought. How could... But it wasn't Simon, of course. This man was taller, younger, probably only a few years older than I was, 21 or 22 at the most. His eyes were not brown, but green, and his face was leaner. He was less well-kept, too. His dark hair was ruffled and windswept, long enough to brush the collar of his leather jacket and the loose linen shirt underneath. But despite that, his clothes were well-made, like Simon's, the work of a skilled tailor, and perhaps most telling of all, he wore a ring in the shape of a raven, wings outstretched, the Silvis signet. I was sure of it. He cocked his head, eyebrow raised. "You can put your, weapon down," he said. "It's not for you. It's not you I'm here for." He looked meaningfully at Falada. "I already told him she's not for sale." He turned to Ray. "Can you give us a minute?" Ray nodded and walked away, still snickering to himself. "All right, let's skip all the simpering and sighing. I am purchasing your Empyrean, and I will pay whatever you ask. I'm not in the mind to negotiate. Simply tell me your price and we can get on with it." The young man took out a pouch heavy with coins and waited for my response. "There is no price," I said through gritted teeth. "She is not for sale." "Really?" He put his coins away. "How long has it been since you had something to eat?" I lowered my stick just a little. "Your hands are shaking," he continued. "There are dark circles under your eyes. I'd say it's been at least 2 days, maybe 3, since you've had a meal. I know you didn't try race soup, because you gave it to her." He nudged the empty bowl, licked clean by Falada with his boot. "Probably for the best. I have little faith in Mr. Thackeray's culinary skill." He took me in, examining my stark Renalton servant's dress. "Tell me, what is a Renalton girl doing in the travelers' camps? No companions, half-starving, sleeping on a pile of hay in a dirty stable?" I gave him the same answer I had given Ray. "None of your business." You have to know that you won't survive long without money, or shelter, or rest. He approached me carefully, like I was a cornered feral animal, and slowly removed the stick from my fingers. I decided the biggest difference was in the mouth. Simon had an easy smile, but Zan's lips were like cut glass, artfully shaped but severe. I can provide you with what you need, he said. She's not mine to sell, I stated, trying not to think about how it would feel to fall asleep in a clean, warm bed with food in my stomach and no terror scratching at my door. You stole her? No, I didn't. I took a breath. She belonged to someone I loved. I corrected myself, and the coil inside my chest tightened just a little. He died. He took a step back, studying me. I won't sell her. I'll starve first. And what about her? Will you let her starve? Is that what your dear departed love would have wanted? I didn't have an answer. He gave a deep, haggard sigh. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow morning after you've eaten and slept and can reason properly again. Come along. He took a hold of Falada's reins and led her out of the stable while I scrambled behind them. What are you doing? Where are we going? There's an inn on Canal, not far from Highgate. It's quiet and clean. I expect you'll find it quite comfortable. I can't cross the wall. The corner of his mouth quirked up, just a little. It was the first hint of a smile I'd seen on him, and I didn't think I liked it. It didn't look natural on his grim face. I've got it covered. I knew I shouldn't trust someone whose motives were so obviously counter to mine, but if I was going to be of any use at all in taking tourists down, I had to get inside the wall somehow. I looked again at the ring on his hand, silver and bearing the symbol of a bird with a widespread open wingspan, just like Simon's. I decided to trust him, for the moment. Raymond Thackeray chased us down. What about my payment? He asked. Services were rendered. Here, Zan said, pulling out a small stack of folded papers, dotted with wax and stamped with the Aklovin seal. Thackeray counted them and said, There's only 9 here. You promised 10. I'm keeping this one, he said, as a fee. The horse came with some baggage, as you can see. Count yourself lucky. The prince was in a generous mood to issue 10 invitations at once. He might not give me as many next time. There might not be a next time. King's been sniffing around, wondering who's been making invitations and handing them out to the riffraff. Consider me warned, Zan said, cutting him off. To me, he said, Let's go. Invitations? I asked as we walked. Ray's a smuggler, Zan explained. I use my connections inside the royal family to get him blood-marked invitations issued by the prince, so he can sell them to the highest bidder, and he lets me know when he comes across something I might find interesting. In this case, you, or rather, your Empyrean. Her name is Falada. And what's your name? It's Emily. It was an impulsive decision to give her name as mine. I'd wear it like a cilice. It would hurt, but at least I wouldn't be allowed to forget her. Even in the middle of the night, Zan made his way around the outside of the wall with a deftness that suggested he was well acquainted with its unsystematic layout. We zigzagged through the hive of encampments and clapboard hovels spaced between the occupied gibbets, of which there were many. Where are we going? I asked Zan. Highgate, he said. You'll know it when you see it. He was right. There was no mistaking Highgate when we came to it. Rising at least 20 feet over the already colossal wall was a gatehouse, flanked on each side by a barbican and crowned by a polished sculpture of 3 majestic horses, stamping and rearing, mouths open in silent, defiant screams. They gleamed white in the moonlight, perfect copies of Falada herself. I had to look back at her to remind myself that she was flesh and blood, and they were not. Empyrean horses are incredibly rare and very highly valued in Aklova, Zan said. It's absolutely imperative that we get yours to the stable before anyone else sees her. You're afraid someone might buy her before you can? Not exactly. Beneath the statue, a swarm of shades clamored at the gate. They varied in opacity. Some were fully formed, almost real enough to touch, and had likely met their ends in the last several years. The oldest spirits were but tattered threads of their former selves, caught like flies in a web at the place of their demise. They all had one thing in common, however, a network of blackened veins standing out against their pallid skin. Zan gave me an assessing stare from over his shoulder. I should warn you, even with the royal blood-marked invitation, the crossing is likely to be uncomfortable. Made sense, considering going without one seemed to turn a person's vein into charcoal. Zan passed me the invitation. I'll go through first. When you get to the borderline, break the seal on this parchment and place your hand over the prince's mark. After that, you'll step onto the border, holding the invitation in front of you, like this. He demonstrated, then he reached for Falada. Animals can cross without incident. I'll take her through first. No, I said. She goes through with me. He gave an irritated sigh. Fine. Good luck. He turned on his heel and walked underneath the portcullis without pause or any further comment. On the other side, he put his hands in his pocket and waited. I wondered if, when I stepped onto the borderline, I'd find that the invitations were fake. He could let me burn to a crisp and take Falada like he wanted. But what did I have to lose? Without breaking his gaze, partly to convince him of my fearlessness and partly to keep from making eye contact with a crowd of spirit spectators who were all now watching to see if I'd soon be joining their ranks, I broke the wax seal and unfolded the parchment. In black ink, the words were carefully lettered. This blood, given freely by Valentine de Aklev, hereby grants the bearer of this document passage into the city of Aklev, across the wall and through the gates. Beneath that, a rust-colored drop of blood had been drawn into an approximation of the three-pointed knot. With a deep breath, I pressed my fingers against the symbol and then, parchment held in both hands, stepped under the portcullis. At first, I felt nothing, but slowly the blood mark began to streak out across the page in cobwebby tendrils, disintegrating the paper into ash as it went. And it didn't stop at the end of the paper. The red lines simply twisted and coiled onto my hands. I fought the urge to scream as searing heat struck across my skin and dug, needle-like, beneath it, boring into my flesh, my bones, my blood, until the whole world was laced with pain and red heat. I closed my eyes and let it overtake me, allowing the magic to circulate inside until I was nothing but burning, molten light. Sounds intense. And then it was over. I took 2 stumbling steps and fell to my knees on the other side of the borderline with a gasp. Falada followed behind, nonchalant. If the same thing had just happened to her, she didn't show it. Blood of the Founder, I muttered through heaving gulps of breath. You bastard! Zan's mouth was screwed to one side. I told you it would be uncomfortable. The gates are spelled against foreign blood. It's an incredibly powerful magic. It gets inside you. It tests you. Now imagine what it would be like if you didn't have the prince's mark to shield you. I shuddered, glancing back in sympathy at the sad lot of spirits who hadn't. On the bright side, he said amiably, you only ever have to do it once, unless someone in the royal family revokes your invitation. He helped me to my feet. The end's this way, he said. We gotta hurry. The sun will be up soon. I took a faltering step forward, but had to stop for fear I'd fall again. My legs were weak and unsteady. Zan grumbled impatiently and put my arm over his shoulder. This is not how I wanted to spend my entire night. I said icily, by all means, go on your way and leave me and my horse to ourselves. We were doing just fine. Were you now? Zan said. And that's why, at our introduction, you greeted me with a cudgel? I glared at him, wishing I still had a weapon at hand. We went several more blocks in silence, keeping to the shadows beneath the windows of the black-timbered buildings lining either side of the street. A figure stepped out from a side alley, taller than Zan by at least a head and taller than me by 2. He put down his hood, revealing a face of deep sable complexion and solemn expression. You shouldn't have gone past the wall alone, Zan, the man said in an exasperated rumble. You know you can't. I'm sorry, Nathaniel, but time was of the essence. Zan hastily dumped my arm from his shoulder. I had to go as soon as I got Thackeray's message. He was right, too. It was an Empyrean. The man, Nathaniel, eyed me. And this is a complication. Zan tossed him Falada's reins. My name is Emily, I said irritatedly, turning to Nathaniel. Your employee is greatly lacking in manners. Nathaniel snorted to smother a laugh, while Zan went sullen. I'm afraid you have that the wrong way around. He's my bodyguard and swordsman. Then Zan amended. My friend, too, of course. I shot Nathaniel a sympathetic look. You must have your work cut out for you. I've known him less than an hour, and I already want to kill him. It's a taxing job, Nathaniel said. Zan ignored us. We'll have to house her in an inn stables tonight. The horse, not the girl, though she does seem to have a fondness for sleeping in stables. I glared at him, unruffled. He continued. I'll talk to the innkeeper about getting her something to eat and providing her with a place to sleep for a day, maybe two. I'm not selling you my horse, I said again. Zan gave me a patronizing smile. We'll talk tomorrow. That's the end of chapter 11. The end of the beginning of part 2. So I will see you in the next video for chapter 12. Happy reading. Stay safe. Bye-bye.